Philomena had its world premiere at the Venice Film Festival in September 2013. I sat next to Dame Judi Dench in 2,000 capacity cinema. I felt incredibly nervous, partly because it was the first time the film had been seen, but also because we were premiering it in a Catholic country. As producer and co-writer, I'd obviously seen the film before, but it was the first time Judy had seen it. The audience made plenty of noise, almost as though they were watching a silent movie. Their responses were theatrical. I could hear sharp intakes of breath, followed by loud applause in the scene where I say, "fucking Catholics." There was, in fact, spontaneous applause throughout the film, and as soon as the credits were rolling, the audience was on its feet, applauding. A light picked out Judy, Stephen, and myself in our seats on the balcony. The audience turned and directed their applause at us. We stood up, feeling happy, but a little overwhelmed and almost embarrassed. The applause must have lasted for 10 minutes. It felt like it might never end. I looked at Judy, who simply smiled. I had nothing to compare it to. I didn't know how to gauge it. Someone leaned over to me and said, "This is very good. If they don't like a film, they boo." So finally I allowed myself to enjoy the moment. The reaction in Venice was surreal. I had hoped for a positive response to the film, but I hadn't been prepared for a standing ovation. And then journalists were voluntarily effusive, and I know from experience that journalists keep their counsel if they don't like something. Some even came up to me on the verge of tears and said, "Thank you for making this film." It was a very strange experience. I felt like someone else disassociated, much like I do when I perform live. Coming from a large Catholic family, I've always been on the lookout for approbation, but I don't really know how to deal with it when I get it. So I end up feeling disconnected. We had a sense that we'd written something good, but we didn't know how people would be affected by the film. The response from women in particular has been incredible. Sometimes 3 generations of women went to see Philomena, and if I met them after a Q&A, they would say, "What a wonderful, warm film, we all loved it so much." It reinforced my earlier point about cynicism. There are films that deal with love and sentiment, but they are nearly always cynical. It's almost as if the studios have a cynical box that they ask writers and directors to tick. In my opinion, the only sincerity they admire is the big, broad studio type that tests well. I was, on occasion, overwhelmed by the response. After one Q&A in America, a large group of middle-aged women hung around to talk to me. My American assistant, Jessica, took a photo of me looking slightly messianic. I'm crouching down, talking to these women from the stage as they look up at me. She said I looked like a cross between Jeremy Kyle and Jesus Christ. I think people responded to the humanity in the film. It's not arrogant, it doesn't claim to have all the answers. There's an imperfection about it simply because there isn't a definitive resolution, nor is there total redemption. It allows both Philomena and Martin to say, "You don't have to win the argument, life can move on. It's okay that both of us have flaws." Martin is very bullish at the start of the film. He thinks his worldview is the right one, but he's wrong. Philomena teaches him a lesson in the end. There's no right and wrong, just different ways of living our lives. That's me admonishing myself for my own cynicism, because I still have to think quite consciously about not being cynical. On the 16th of January 2014, the Oscar nominations were announced. I was half asleep in my Los Angeles hotel room when the phone rang just before 6 a.m. I'd been trying to sleep all night, and I was in this semi-dreamlike state in which I was convinced it was midday and I'd overslept. The phone rang and I jolted awake as if I'd had an electric shock. My American publicist Jessica was on the other end. She was screaming, "You've got 3 Oscar nominations! Best Picture, Best Actress, Best Adapted Screenplay." I didn't watch the Oscar nominations because it would have been excruciating to watch it and not get anything. A single nomination would have been amazing. We weren't in any of the American newspapers' Oscar predictions, which made it even more delicious. It was a very emotional day, not least because my mum left a message in which she was barely able to talk because she was crying. And then 3 nominations became 4 when Alexander Desplat was nominated for his original score. I absolutely love it. It's the antithesis of the kind of prescriptive score that tells you what you're watching is either quirky or significant. It doesn't spoon-feed you with some kind of emotion in the vein of John Williams, who I've always found annoyingly prescriptive. It was a whirlwind of